Okay, trustees, we are live. We are recording. Phone lines are opened. Go for it.
Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the regular meeting of the East Hampton Town Trustees for January 27th, 2025. And I'd like to open with the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Arlene, can you do roll call, please? Here. Here.
Yes. Here. Here. Yes.
Here. Okay, we'll start with public comment. Begin with Robert Vasilith. Safe Environmental with an update on eelgrass seeding project and an additional request to expand the seeding area. Robert, how are you?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I would like to discuss the work that I did last year for the town of East Hampton with collaborations with trustees and Wally Dunn, the hatchery director, as well as collaborations with Cornell Cooperative Extension to do this project of eelgrass in Napeague Harbor. Everything went pretty well. I collected a lot of seeds. I dove with Pete Toppings, who put into the Water Quality Protection Fund. And I got to work with him in the classroom, not the classroom, but the Marine Museum. And I got to work with a lot of students from town of East Hampton and against elementary school, East Hampton Elementary School, and East Hampton High School. I did 3 workshops with students, 3 days workshops with students, and then I did 4 workshops, the whole day workshops at the East Hampton Shellfish Nursery. And that was pretty successful as well with a lot of volunteers. One of the trustees here, Dave, he showed up with a lot of students that he works with, and they did really good. They were happy to do this work. I was happy to do it with them. All together, with the help of the Southwark shellfish farmers and local residents and all these students and some friends and family, we were able to glue about 100,000 seeds to 10,000 clams. And we transported them, Wally Dunn, myself, and Pete Toppings, to Napeague Harbor, and we deployed them with the machine that I built to disperse them in a systematic way. The area, the plot size was small. It was a 100 by 100 plot size that was laid out by Cornell Cooperative Extension, monitored beforehand to evaluate the amount of eelgrass was there, and was found as maybe a couple of plants, not too much. So the work's been done. Now we got to wait till June before Cornell goes back to do the monitoring again. I expect it to be similar to what I saw in 2023 when I did this work. Actually, in 2024, I saw the results of the 2023 planting I did, which is adjacent to this property in Napeague Harbor where we did the 2024 planting. So if you could, please show the video. In the top.
Rob, can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
The 2023 planting, was that laid out the same way that 2024 was, or was that done more, off the cuff?
In 2023, I did not use the facility at East Hampton Shellfish Nursery on Gann Road. Store reproductive shoots, but in 2024 I did.
But the plot in the harbor, was it the same size as
No.
the 24 plot?
The first plot in 2023 was about 50 feet by 50 feet by 50 feet, a triangle. And I believe two of those, there was 3 buoys put out. I believe 2 of the buoys are still there. So in 2024, on June 2nd, I went and I took these underwater photos. So to know where Napeague Harbor is up in the top left is the picture of Napeague Harbor. And in the top right is a blue dot marking Iodine Beach. So the planting location 23 and 24 is about 150 feet away from that dot. In shallow water between 2 and 4 feet of water. And these pictures here are some of the clusters of eelgrass that were growing. And none of them have what they call reproductive shoots. And that's how you can tell these are first-year plants. If they were second-year plant, they had been growing there already, they would have some reproductive shoots, but none of the plants that I went through in this marked out area had any reproductive shoots. So it lets me know that all of these plants are new. And as well, if you look at the plants a little bit more closely, you'll see that it's not a very wide pattern on the bottom. It's a very small patch coming out. A 2-year plant would be the size of a garbage pail. And that's what I expect to see from the 23 planting in the spring of 2025. As well, I plan on seeing a lot of plants from the 2024 planting.
Hey, Robert, have you done germination tests on the seed that you harvest in the lab to see what kind of germination rates you're getting out of your seed to kind of ascertain how much, I want to say, pure live seed you're putting down? And have you done any quantitative surveys of your success rates relative to the number of seed clams or whatever that you've spread?
Yes, and on the last part of that, no, I haven't done the quantitative work on the success or failure of this work. But as well, in 2023 and 2024, I'm collaborating with Connecticut College, UConn, and the remote colleges, all scientists that I work with, and Save the Sound, with grant funding that was given by a private 11th Hour Racing down there, funder. And they tested the efficacy of this work with the scientific method, and they did in-lab germination testing, and they did open water testing as well with this method, growing seeds to clams. We call it the seeds method. It's seeds of eelgrass attached to shellfish. So it's pretty easy to say seeds instead of anything else.
Is that work available?
Yes, and in the next slide, which is not clickable, there's a link on the bottom that shows the December 5th meeting of the New York, Connecticut Bi-State Eelgrass Collaborative. I'm one of the 6 practitioners in the collaborative that grows eelgrass from seeds. And 2 other practitioners are Dave Hudson and Maria Rosa. Maria Rosa is a PhD professor from Connecticut College. She's doing in-lab studies and open water studies. They chose 3 locations in Connecticut, eastern Connecticut, Groton, next to Groton, Clinton Harbor, Duck Island, and the Thames River. All 3 locations were very successful in 2024. When they looked at it, they had data for that. They used transects. And in 2024, they were very happy about the success of this. All scientists involved had done this work before with seeds and had no success. And had some success with this. They jumped on doing more side-by-side studies that were just done in 2024. And hopefully we'll see some good results in 2025.
Do you have those studies, that data? Was that published or presented?
The 2 of the practitioners down I'm working with, Maria Rosa and Dave Hudson, published it in the December 5th collaborative meeting, some of the findings of their results.
So it was presented in a meeting, it's like a,
Yeah, well, right now, there's they wrote articles that they're using for more funding, and they plan on submitting papers that should be hopefully submitted in February and peer reviewed and accepted by November. As well, the seeds that they used in 2023 are the same seeds I used in 2023 in Nappy Harbor, which all came from Orient Point. So that data that they collected for those seeds is the same seeds I used in Nappy Harbor in 2023.
would you be able to get us a copy of the results of their lab tests on that seed, on the seed?
Absolutely, but right now it's proprietary information, data, they're writing the papers on it, that's their business. I can't disseminate that data until they publish it.
But they presented it.
They could write a small white paper for us, for you, to see the preliminary results without the actual technical data that's there.
So Robert, you're here today for an update, some additional permitting. What are we doing here tonight?
I'm looking to continue planting in Nappy Harbor, and I'm asking for your permission to do so with on-bottom aquaculture permits that were last year were renewed, and in 2023 they were issued. They're amended on-bottom aquaculture permits to include blue and eelgrass seeds from New York with cyanocrylite glue for New York DEC on-bottom aquaculture permit.
Hey, Bob, let me ask you, where are you collecting your seed?
For the work I did in Nappy Harbor, was from Orient Point and Cedar Point. Both were from Gardner's Bay.
So Rob, I know the work you did last year and is, going to be evaluated this summer was done on a water quality grant in the town. Are you planning to reapply for a grant to do an additional plot?
I'm looking
And
to
is that
apply
part of this
to the
request?
water quality improvement plan for at least 1 acre, what I did last year. And I'd like to double my efforts, if not triple them. So I would like to do at least 20,000 clams with 200,000 seeds on them in Nappy Harbor. And what I'd really like to do is from this initial area that's set up by Iodine Beach, which is slowly going to become meadow. On the south side, on the southeastern side of Nappy Harbor is the last bit of an eelgrass meadow that remains. Probably remains because it had cold water, keeping it from reaching that point where it can't take that thermal limit.
Yeah, there's a freshwater seat right there.
It's probably saltwater intrusion as well. But anyway, from the spot in Iodine Beach was almost the center on the east side of Nappy Harbor. I want to make a bridge with the machine I built to lay out these clams. It's about 1,600 feet to get to that remaining eelgrass bed on the south side. And I just want to take the machine and go back and forth in that area, taking up as much as 2 acres of property. The machine I built lays out 10 feet wide and travel at 5 miles an hour. You could put out 10,000 clams like we did in 10 minutes.
So is this proposal going to be submitted for funding to the Water Quality Committee?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, so let's make a motion to give 2 more acres.
well, no. The way I look at it, we we support your work, and we support the continuation of your work, but we don't have any details as to what that means yet. And that will come, as far as I understand, in the proposal to the water quality for funding, like you did last year. So
I have that, I can send that to you.
you have the
I have it all written up. I
proposal that
just got to go over a couple numbers and stuff, so
submit.
pretty much have it all. I will happily send it to you. I believe I did.
Can we get that in the application, either attached to it or somehow embedded in it? Because in the application, it doesn't have any detail. And the other thing would be helpful is GPS coordinates of where you were working last time and where you plan to work this time. So we have
I
that.
have those coordinates and I can send them.
That would be good in the application, I think that.
And I have an agreement with Steve Schott, who is Cornell Property Extension. He's a habitat botanist specialist. I've been working with Steve for many years. He agrees with me to extend this planting to the south to help the genetic diversity of what's left, and that it's probably the best area to fill in that's void of eelgrass at this time.
Yeah, Bob, what I want to make clear is you're not planning on seeding through that existing eelgrass.
No, just up to where it's missing. And it should add to the genetic diversity.
So Bob, you've been piggybacking on a DEC permit? Is that what I heard?
Yes, to use clams, to put clams into the water, I need to use an on-bottom aquaculture permit.
Okay, I understand all that. My issue is we have a lot of different projects going on. We have oyster reefs going on. We have all kinds of different projects, kelp growing, and we need to keep have an idea of what's going where. So we're asking you to submit for a trustee permit with a narrative and the GPS coordinates and all that before we grant you the absolute permission to continue.
Okay, fair enough.
Listen, just so we don't throw a wrench in your works, when are you planning on submitting to that water, for that water quality grant?
February 9th.
Well, I think our meeting's February 9th, isn't it? Or is it the following?
Our next meeting.
Well, I don't think Rob needs a final permit
Okay.
on February
Listen, if we
9th.
can get, we meet
As long
twice a month. If you can get us the information
9th is a
and
Sunday.
give us a chance to look at it, let the community weigh in if there's any issues here. I think for our next meeting, I think we'll probably be able to green light this. I think it's great. I mean, if you're getting success from your pictures, although I'm not going to buy into those friggin' pictures that you showed there, as far as this being a total success, It's like, you ever see that shit they advertise in the back of Horticulture Magazine, Super Thrive, says, used to transplant 15,000 palm trees. None of them died. What does that mean? Nothing. I'd really love to see this and actually go out and witness it personally, because I do think.
You dive, right? Don't you take pictures?
Yes.
You should get
You
out
don't
there.
even need
And
your
you were
scuba gear, you
supposed-
just need a
No,
mask.
you were
and you walk
supposed to
right in.
call me, man. The last time you were here, you said, I'm going to call the office. I'm going to get Jim's number. I'm going to tell him what day I'm going to be out here. And Jim's going to come down and take some freaking pictures. But you know what? Never got to call him.
Please forgive me. I will not make that mistake again.
I'll be glad to come by. I love taking pictures and stuff like that.
It would be right to have a third party, a party other than me. Say that.
No, it's not even that. I just am really intrigued by the whole concept here. If it's successful, I'd love to see quantitatively How successful is it? Because it's for your own edification and this board's, if
I
something's
could
working.
show
is
you
it-
other pictures from
Is it
work I've
working?
done in the Great South Bay
Yeah,
in 2021.
I don't really care about that.
I,
I'm only
can I
caring about
just,
this.
Well, it was a 1 acre plot with 10,000 clams with 90,000 seeds, and it's blossomed into 10 to 12 acres.
That is
So it's
correct.
visible from
Yeah.
Google Earth.
the plot that was seeded last year was evaluated prior to seeding by Cornell. And it'll be evaluated this summer, so post-seeding. And the proposed work that Rob's undertaking this season will have a similar evaluation by Cornell, if I'm not mistaken. So they'll be doing a pre-planting and assessment of eelgrass, and then they'll be doing post, but,
No, I
a
think
year
I think it's
later.
wonderful.
So we'll have two plot, that's what we're looking for, and getting 2 years of data on success of planting by this method.
That's, we're all gonna wait for that. That's, thing about eelgrass, it takes a long time to grow.
Well,
But
it
I
seems
have
to be
a-
growing pretty quick.
I have this, I'm now a contractor for the Nature Conservancy in West Sable Boat Basin, where I run a lab that I kind of built. In this lab, I'm conducting germination studies. And these germination studies I'm conducting are going to be accepted collaborative data for the germination studies that have been being done right now in Connecticut College and UConn. So the thing about doing these germination studies for what I'm doing, what I'm looking to do, is have the best success. So everyone plants this stuff with seeds in November, December, or even in September. As soon as they get them, sometimes they plant them, they broadcast seed them. It just never works. That's why I came up with this method. But to have better success, we could have a windstorm in any one direction, and it will wipe out the entirety of the project, as successfully as it might be. So to overcome that hurdle, as I need to overcome the hurdles of predators, crabs, and other predators that eat these clams and seeds, I do it in the colder months. And it gets to be a time where the clams are so cold, they won't bury. And I can't do my method in the cold, cold weather when the water's below 50 degrees. Clams stop burying themselves. If they do that, and I use this method with growing seeds on clams, they'll roll around, and the seeds will fall off of them, and it won't work. But it would work when the water gets up to around 50 degrees in the spring. My friends that I collaborate with in England, they only do their planting of seeds in the springtime because they have some wicked storms over there, they tell me. So I am working in this lab to do these germination studies for the fall plantings, but I'm also doing a germination study every month to find out the data, the bell curve that I'm looking for the spring plantings. I have 100,000 seeds from last year that I'm going to be planting for the third spring planting in the Great South Bay. If I could overcome this hurdle of these storms, you never know when one's going to hit, and plant in April, maybe May, maybe even up to June, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And that's where I'm leading in this work that I'm doing and making it more successful. And I'm dragging Cornell and Connecticut College into it. That's the best I could do up to now. But as far as success goes, my educational component that I've been doing for many years now, last year was by far the most amazing. I had altogether in 2 states, I had over 300 volunteers, 200 of them were students, over 100 of them were second, third graders from East Hampton and Hampton. That's my updates, my plans and proposals. I know the information you all need. Thank you for entertaining me and giving me the opportunity to do this again.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Rob. That's great. Good.
Rob, where do the clams come from? Do they become viable clams?
They, the Wally Dunn, the director of the East Hampton Shellfish Hatchery, he produces a tremendous amount of these clamps. So the clamps I use are very small. They're about 18 millimeters to 25 millimeters. Working with these kids, I actually figured out a new way, a new discovery how to do this work a little bit more efficiently, a little faster. And that's part of what I'm looking to do is doing it faster, better, quicker.
Okay.
And Wally makes some really good shellfish in that hatchery. Compared to the isolate hatchery, it's a big difference. You got the best. And I got to thank Stacy Myers. Stacy Myers, phenomenal. She's full of energy. She knows how to work with these students. She has personal relationships with some of them, and I was really impressed with her. And I didn't know she was going to have so many students, but she managed to bring them all through. And I didn't expect that. It was. I'm very thankful for Stacy Myers. That was pretty cool.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Robert.
Have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thanks. All right, Matt, do we have anybody on the line?
You have 0 calls on the line. Thank you.
Do we have Dole?
Hey, you say Michael Dole?
Zoom.
Mike, you're up.
Hey, everybody. Hi, everybody. For those that don't know me, my name is Mike Dole. I'm a researcher at Stony Brook University. I work with Dr. Chris Gobler there. And I'm here to present to you a proposal, a plan to expand the oyster restoration work we've been doing in Georgia Pond and to actually build an oyster reef. Can I share my screen to put a PowerPoint up?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. You can't see that, can you?
No.
Okay.
You got it. You're up.
That's on, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, before I present the plan, which I've already sent, I don't know if you've received it, but I sent a written plan for the reef project. I'd like to just first give you a little background to what led us to this point where we think it is feasible and plausible to try to restore an oyster reef in Georgia Pond. And some of this you've probably seen Chris Gobler present in the past, so I'll be brief, but please stop me if you have questions. So really our work began over 5 years ago in 2019. We put oysters in cages at 3 locations in Georgia Pond, shown in the map on the bottom right there. And in 2019, we deployed single set seed. Okay, that's shown all the way to the left. The seed's on a piece of grid paper, just so you know. You'll see that grid paper a couple of times through the presentation. Those little squares on the grid paper are 1 centimeter. So we put single set seed out, and that was from the East Hampton hatchery. Thank you, Barley. And in a couple years later, in 2021, we put out spat on shell, again in the cages. And you can see a picture of that there also. So with the oyster seed, it's been 5 years now. We've seen really high survivorship over this 5+ year period. The oysters are still out there, so this is continuing. So we've had oysters in the cages for over 5 years. And over 5 years, we've had about 40 to 50% survival of the oysters, which is really quite amazing. At the north site, we terminated after the first couple years. As you can see, the oysters were doing very well, but it's a very, very muddy site. We were literally sinking knee deep in the mud, getting to the cages, and realized that this was not going to be a good restoration site for a reef. So we terminated that north site. Continued the central and the south site. And so we've just had this amazing survivorship and also had some amazing growth. So you can see the growth curve here. Okay, so that's just over time, over this 5 year period. You see how growth goes up in a stepwise pattern? That's because the oysters grow in the warmer months, and then they're pretty dormant during the colder months in the winter. So you see this stepwise pattern in growth. But after 5 years now, those single set oysters are over 4 inches long. You can see the pictures at the bottom. Again, the starting seed size on the left. And then these are the adult oysters. So now you see that's the 1-page piece of grid paper, where you could fit all those oysters on the grid paper right there. Now you can just put a couple. So you really have had great growth. Same with the spat on shell. So again, this is just showing the survivorship curve and the growth curve for the spat on shell that were deployed. And they were deployed in 2021. It's been a little over 3 years, and really high survivorship and great growth. And you can just see the sequence of growth pictures on the bottom, which is just fascinating to watch. Fascinating to watch unfold. And I'm saying this is really high survivorship, really high survivorship. So to put that into a context, these are some comparisons here to oysters that we put in Shinnecock Bay. These are the same year class, put out at just about the same time, and just following these survivorship curves over time. And we've been putting oysters in Shinnecock Bay for going on 8 years now. So we put out cohorts of spat on shell every year, and we get really very similar results every single year. We see a large drop in survivorship in the first year. 40 to 50% of the little tiny spat on shell die in the first year. And then mortality slows down after that, but you still see mortality every year at a much higher rate than you see in Georgia Capon. So let me just point out, if you don't see the legend, the Georgia Capon's in orange and Shinnecock Bay is in the blue. And the top graph is comparing 219 year classes that were put out, and the bottom is 2021 year classes that were put out. So you see this much, much higher survivorship in Georgia Capon. And I'm only going to show this comparison here, but from 20 plus years of doing oyster research in coastal waters all around Long Island, from the Hudson-Raritan estuary, out through the Peconic estuary on the North Shore and the South Shore, never seen survivorship over this long term, this high in the coastal waters around Long Island. So it's really pretty much the highest oyster longevity we've seen. And one reason why, just in this comparison with Shinnecock Bay, one thing driving this higher mortality in Shinnecock Bay is predation. Okay, so in these Shinnecock Bay comparisons, the oysters are not in cages. Okay, this is building a reef out in Shinnecock Bay, whereas in Georgia Capon, I'm showing you oysters that were in cages, and they're protected from large predators like crabs. So that's one reason. Why the survivorship is lower in Shinnecock Bay, but that impacts of predation really is just in the first year when the spat are small, and that's when crabs can eat them. After the first year, they get big enough where the crabs really can't eat them. So what's driving this high mortality over the longer term? And I'll just point out that in both Shinnecock Bay. Well, in Shinnecock Bay, blue crabs is one of our main predators there on the spat on shell. And as you know, they're also very abundant in Georgia Capon. But another factor that we've found, over the years, not just in Shinnecock Bay, but around Long Island, like dermo, it's an oyster disease called dermo, is really one of the leading causes of mortality in oysters. It's a disease caused by a single-cell protozoan called Perkensis marinus. It's pretty ubiquitous throughout the salty bays of Long Island. You can see, this is some data from Shinnecock Bay where we measured dermo in oysters of different ages on our restored reef there. And you can see the prevalence, that's the percentage of oysters that actually have this disease. The prevalence by the time they're 1 year old is pretty high. It's like, almost 3/4 of the oysters. And that prevalence stays high throughout their life and even increases. And if you look at the bottom figure, this is what's known as intensity of derma, how bad the infection is. It increases as oysters get older. And it's exactly what we saw in Shinnecock Bay. We just see after you have that initial mortality from predation in the first year, it kind of slows down, but increases as the oysters get older, as they die from derma. The units on this dermo intensity is something called the Mackin scale, used to grade how intense the infection is. The Mackin scale actually goes up to 4, but just so you know, 3 is very high. If you have a 3 on the Mackin scale, it most likely is going to lead to mortality in the oysters. And by the time they're 4 to 5 years old in Shinnecock Bay, more than half the oysters are grading over a 3 on the Mackin scale. The picture on the left here, I just wanted to throw it up. That's just looking under the microscope of a section of oyster tissue, and those little dots in there, that's showing the infection by dermo, those little dark dots. So that's what the scientists are looking at under the microscope to evaluate the dermo infections. And we also did measurements of dermo in Georgia Pond. And I'd like to just show you that comparison. Again, in Georgia Pond, we looked at, in 2023, the same year, we looked at 2-year-old oysters, which are on the red bars, and 4-year-old oysters, which are blue bars. Again, the top is prevalence, the percent of oysters that are infected, and the bottom graph is intensity, how severe the infection is. And you can see in Shinnecock Bay, if we look at the prevalence, almost all the oysters have dermo in Shinnecock Bay, whether they're 2 years old or 4 years old. Very low prevalence in Georgia Pond, whether they're 2-year-olds or 4-year-old oysters, very, very low prevalence. Most of the oysters don't even have an infection. And if you look at the severity of the infection on the bottom figure, you can see a very, very mild case. Those oysters that do have dermo in Georgia Pond, very, very, very mild case. It's not problematic at all to the oysters. So really, just interesting comparison. What's driving this, and we kind of suspected this starting this work, is salinity. So dermo really does not exist or does not do well at salinities under 15 parts per thousand. And for much of the year, Georgia Pond is under this salinity range. So the low salinity in Georgia Pond creates a refuge from this disease. And one of the reasons, or probably the driving, one of the main reasons why oyster longevity is so long in Georgia Pond. So this was all really encouraging. So we wanted to take a next step in experiments, and in 2022, we put out bags of spat on shell. I'm sure you're familiar with this from the work that Barley's done. You're very similar, putting shell in these mesh bags, setting spat on them, and then using these bags. They're very common in in oyster restoration world to use bags of spat on shell to build oyster reefs. It's a very common practice. So we just wanted to test it, put it out there, and see what happens. Especially now they're going to be exposed to blue crabs, and see what happens. So we did this at 2 sites where we had been monitoring the oysters at we'll call them the central site and the south site. We put out these shell bags. We did this, it was in November of 2022. We put the shell bags out. At each site, we just placed 12 bags. We laid them down in 2 adjacent rows, so 6 bags in a row. You can see a picture up here underwater. And again, I just want to point out they're exposed to predators now. So unlike everything we did in the previous year in cages, they're going to be exposed to these blue crabs now. So really, just to sum up what we found after 2+ years, and these shell bags, are still out there too. So this is ongoing. There's many living oysters on the shell bags at each reef site. There is evidence of heavy blue crab predation on the oyster spat, which we expected. And that's the evidence is what we call predation scars. If you look at these bottom pictures, you can see basically the bottom shell of dead oysters, that it's adhered to the shell, the top shell missing. It could be, you don't really know what caused the mortality, but this is often a sign of crab predation. And really, predation was really, really heavy on the spat on the outside of the bag. So all the surface spat. And when we initially started with these shell bags, we were a little disappointed because when we'd go check on them, we didn't see oysters. We eventually took bags back to the lab, opened it up and went through it, and were shocked to find literally hundreds of oysters per bag, 200, 300 oysters per bag alive. A lot of those oysters were hidden within the shell matrix of these shell bags. You can see them by the time they're 2 years old, you see them starting to break through the bags. Okay, so the oysters are starting to grow up. So the matrix of shell in these shell bags helps hide the oysters from the predators. We get great survivorship, and by the time they're 2 years old, they're larger than the predators can eat. So they're at that predator refuge size. So again, really encouraging results. We've been able to show that oysters have very long lifespan in Georgia Pond. They can thrive and grow in Georgia Pond. And in this restoration context of putting out shell bags, offer some protection from the predators, and enough oysters can grow up to get past that size where predators eat them and get to a size where they're going to spawn and produce larvae. So that's the background. That's what leads us to this point. And I'd like to just now quickly go over the plan that I sent you and the plan that we're proposing to expand the oyster restoration and actually build a larger scale reef. It's still small, and it's all relative. Larger than we've been doing, but still a pretty small reef. We selected the site in central Georgia Pond. The address, we've been working, it's accessible from the shore. The homeowner, David Blinken at 118 Briar Patch Road, has been giving us access through his property. And he supplied a letter, which I actually sent just before the meeting. And thank you, Sarah Davidson, for getting that letter. Just to let you know that he's granting permission for us to continue working through that property. We selected a site that has a relatively firm bottom. It's kind of compacted sandy bottom where we were working. We know the oysters have done great there. It may be temporarily exposed during low tides. We've seen that through the years when the inlets open, the tide after the tide drops, and we have a low tide. The oysters do get exposed. But it hasn't been a problem. They are able to tolerate those short exposures. Oysters are an intertidal organism down south. As long as they, as long as they don't get exposed in super freezing temperatures like we've had the last couple weeks, they should be fine. So that's the location we selected. I just want to say, at the south location, if you can see my cursor, which is down in this area, we've also had very good success with the oysters, but there's a lot of dredging, as you know, that goes on down here. And really shocking this past year, just to see how close the dredging was to actually where we put the oysters, and the silt that's produced and everything is not great. And we also, the first year we put the bags out, we had a bunch of bags go missing, and we never found out where they went. It was before the dredging started. It didn't have anything to do with the dredging. But for that reason also, we figured this central site was a much better site to at least start with the first reef. The shell bags we're going to use are also biodegradable. So they're made from potato starch. There's a company in the Netherlands producing these bags. It's the same bags that Barley's been using. I think Barley gave me the contact information for this company, but it's basically made from waste potato starch from the French fry industry. So it's completely biodegradable. That bag will disappear over time. We put 5 gallons of clean cured oyster shell into each bag. And after they're filled, the dimensions, they're about 25 centimeters high. At about 40 centimeter diameter. They're kind of roundish, like a spheroidal shape to them. And in the design, we propose basically to put down 100 bags. The area is about 20 meters long by 1 meter wide, running parallel to the shore, as you can see in these pictures. And it's about 45 meters from the shore. And we're proposing to put 100 shell bags in this area. 2 rows of 50 bags each. So a very simple design. You'll often find naturally set oysters in bands, running parallel to the shore in zones where they'll have substrate and, a lot of factors. They don't settle too high up in the intertidal because they'll be exposed too long. So we feel that this was a really, a nice area. The water depths are, well, again, they vary whether or not the inlet's open or closed, but at the lowest point, when the inlet's open, they could be exposed at a low tide, and then, submerged by at least a foot at high tide. So that's the design of the reef. I just want to point out something kind of new that I've been adding to this reef building. We always put a substrate under the bags, and lots of times it's just loose shell. And that helps prevent the bags from subsiding into the sediments and getting buried, which would kill the oysters. Shell is quite limiting, and there's been a lot of oyster restoration around Long Island, and shell is becoming more and more limiting of a resource. So instead of using shell to put the base, I've been playing with these mesh mats you see in the picture. They're also biodegradable, from the same company, made from potato starch. So they will completely disappear. They're used in all sorts of coastline restoration projects. They provide great surfaces for settlement. They help stabilize sediments, so they're used in all types of marsh restoration. The picture I showed down here is from down in Florida, where it's being used in an oyster restoration. The team down there used these meshes, embedded shell in them, and made a great. This is in like in a mangrove area, so you can the picture's not that clear, but you can see those are all oysters in that, and it's built off of these meshes. So basically, I just want to use these to go underneath the oyster bags to help reduce burial of the oyster bags. And again, they'll also degrade over time, and by the time they degrade, hopefully the oysters are very big. They grow up out of the sediments. And the final part to the plan is just to continue doing what we've been doing with oysters in cages. So we want to continue at least the 3 sites we've been doing now. This is something that can be expanded upon in the future. And the purpose of this is to keeping the oysters going, is just to put more spawning stock into Georgia Pond, increase the amount of larvae that's produced, which will hopefully increase the probability that larvae are going to come settle on this reef that we built to help sustain that reef over time. So really, we just want to maintain oysters in cages for spawning stock. And that's it. So I'm happy to take any questions about the project.
Mike, I just had a question about, as you know, there's a lot of small boat sailing that takes place in Georgia. And I don't know how close they come to shore, but if, the pond is full, I'm sure they could get pretty close to shore. So I don't know if this reef could use some maybe indicator buoys so the boats know it's there.
Agreed. I think I forgot to actually put that in the plan, but that would be, I will add that. That's a must. So we will mark, you saw it's kind of a rectangular area. So at the minimum, we'll put buoys on the corners of this area just to mark the area. I also want to point out, and if Sarah Davison's here, if she's, she can speak to this directly, because she's the one, she spoke with, I believe, the Commodore of the sailing club or a sailing association in Georgia Pond, and who did not think this would be a problem. As long as it's marked and they know, they thought that this area where it was, it wouldn't be a problem.
All right, our harbor master's here, so I talked to him about this last week, and maybe you can get back and forth with him on
Sure,
what the appropriate markings would be on the buoys or the markers.
Hey, Mike, are you, because you've done this for a few years now, are you dropping any uninoculated bags to see if these things will spawn back and start to colonize fresh ground?
Yeah. So we have not seen any recruitment yet. I have to say the numbers of oysters we've had out are rather small, so I'm not necessarily surprised we haven't seen any recruitment. Another thing I want to bring up, and it was actually on my last slide, I forgot to point it out. an unknown in this whole thing. One thing we don't know is that larval life stage. Okay, so after oysters spawn, the first life stage is a planktonic larvae that drifts around in the plankton for the first couple weeks, and we don't know how larvae will do in Georgia pond. Are larvae going to survive? Are they going to make it all the way to metamorphosis? And are they going to settle? As part of this proposed project, that's a research part of the project that we will be doing on this phase, is to better understand the larval phase. And the reason we could do that now, we weren't able to do that a few years ago. The reason we can do that now is some new techniques developed in the Gobler lab. They're molecular techniques where we actually use the DNA and we can identify larvae on a molecular level. The reason that's important is because all bivalve larvae look the same. You can't really tell them apart under a microscope, and to do counts, you just couldn't do it. You couldn't do it accurately, and you couldn't do it at a high enough resolution over time and space to really to do anything substantially. With this new digital PCR technique that we've developed, we're able to just collect water samples, filter them, and then there's a lot of laboratory work that goes on, but then they can be processed 100 samples at a time, and be quantitative also, give you an idea of how much larvae is in the water. So that's something we're going to add to this phase to try to understand that life phase. And that is, but that is an unknown right now. But you're absolutely right in asking the question. I mean, recruitment is important, right? The goal of this is to make this self-sustaining, not to have humans, just keep putting in oysters every year. We want the oyster population itself to become self-sustaining, and key to that is recruitment, right? The oysters producing larvae. They're going to survive all the way to metamorphosis, and then settle and recruit.
So you're not doing any spat collectors, that, you're not going that
Yes, and so in the new phase, yes, we're going to have spat collectors out. In the past, we've had the oysters in the cages themselves have really been our only spat collector, and we see that a lot in areas where we have high recruitment. You actually get recruitment. We get recruitment on the oysters that we have in the cage, but we haven't put out spat collectors. But in this new phase, that's one of the research goals, is to better understand larvae and recruitment in Georgia pond.
We make a motion to approve this project, give a permit for it.
Can I introduce one thing? Mike, when are you planning on doing this?
So, I mean, hopefully in 2025. I will say a next step after this. And this is step one, to get the permission from the trustees. Step two is permission from the DEC.
All right, so I'd really like to hear from some of the other users in Georgia Pond before we just approve something. I know Sarah's here from Friends, but you're only one friend. There are others. Sarah, if you'd like to get up and talk, I'd be more than happy.
Sarah's the best friend.
I am the best friend. Thank you, John. Sarah Davison from the Friends of Georgia Pond Foundation. I think you can get a sense of how thorough and longstanding and careful the oyster experiment has been in Georgia Pond, and really, quite remarkable and successful. However, the pond belongs to everyone, and it is important that everyone's comfortable with this, as the neighbors are comfortable with it. And I did speak with the Commodore of the Georgia Association sailing team, and I discussed it at length with him, and he was very supportive of it, and thought that a reef that side would not be a problem as long as it was identified. Obviously, there's a few baymen who use the pond, and kayakers, paddleboarders. So, Friends would be happy to work with the trustees and the Gobler Lab about an outreach program, education materials about the oyster reef and what to watch for. And as you know, a lot of work goes into building one of these, so we certainly wouldn't want it vandalized or damaged. That's, and we welcome Tim Treadwell for keeping us all in line, right? So that is what I have to say about the oysters. The pond committee for Georgia Pond has not had a chance to meet yet this year. It's been such a crazy year, but I hope we can set up a meeting very soon to talk about the other projects for the work plan this year. And they will be very, very similar to last year's, but I want to sit down with you all and talk about them. One thing that we will be starting this year that's new, it would be applying for the harvester permit, which expires in August of 2026. So this coming year, 2025, we'll be working on with you and the DEC and the town on it, evaluating that permit and seeing what needs to be done to renew that. That's what I really wanted to tell the board. Any questions?
Now, my only suggestion was going to be, guys, if we could table this for maybe 1 month and let some of the members of the public have an opportunity to respond to Mike's presentation here. And, if
Are you going
nobody,
to solicit them?
yes, I will.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's not fair. We get this from people, you see something, you deliberate on it in one meeting, you vote on it. And,
well, this was sent into you.
I don't know.
Okay.
To us, but not, this is the first
Okay,
time.
but this is the first time the public is hearing about this, Sarah.
But they've heard about it every year as we present on the oyster project.
I hear you.
Yeah.
But you know what? What's happening is we're starting to expand this
Yeah,
project. As
fair
we
enough.
expand the project, the opportunities to interface with some of the other users
Absolutely.
increases. And I just want to make sure that we act in a responsible manner in the stewardship of ponds. So
Good.
I
Okay.
very much support this. I
Yeah.
don't want to come off as anything.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Things still up there.
Oh, there he is. Yeah, thank you for your presentation, Mike.
Great, thank you all. I look forward to hearing back from you. I will say that the DEC permit process does take a while. So if we do want to have a chance of doing this in 2025, if you could let me know, I just want to start that process. But
Michael, you're not waiting for an answer from us to make your applications to
They
DEC.
probably need permission from the landowner.
Yeah. But we'll be timely.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand your point. So I think you need to get, make sure all the stakeholders have input, and so I totally agree with your approach. So thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So can we pencil this into the agenda 2 meetings from now?
I think it would be great. Yeah. Love to do it in February if we could.
The second meeting in February?
The
Yeah,
24th.
it'd be 24th.
It gives the first meeting if somebody wants to come in with an issue and comment. Good.
Okay. All right. Tim,
Yes, sir.
you were asked to come in, weren't you?
Yes.
By John?
Yes.
Well,
Go with it.
really just to listen to this presentation and, weigh in on the markings, the need for markings, but I think we covered that.
Absolutely. For the record, I'm pro shellfish.
There's one other thing that I wanted you to weigh in on, or at least listen to. I can't remember what it was.
Crab traps.
Crab traps. We're going to discuss crab traps.
That's what David wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I just think last season we had some discrepancies between commercial crabbing in East Hampton waters. And there was a commercial fisherman in Northwest Creek who had 20 to 30 crab traps that didn't have identification or TED. And we just want to make sure there's a resolution that the, fishermen understand that they need to have a New York State license to do commercial crabbing in East Hampton waters. and they need to have an identification number, and they need to have the TED to protect the terrapins, and Marine Patrol will enforce that.
So currently, we don't issue permits for crab traps,
Yeah,
correct?
we don't, no, but they need a New York State
Mhm.
commercial license.
Is this a direction we want to go in?
I just think if there's a guy with 30 traps and doesn't have a permit and he's pulling up terrapins and turtles out of the waters, we don't want to, there's a protected species there.
So what's the status of the elimination devices? Those are required of commercial
Crab traps.
crab trap holders, permit holders, but not recreational.
Tim, is there,
No, a trap for a recreational person would also have to have the same equipment, particularly, it still would have to be tagged. So honestly, those pots in that area, they weren't really on our radar. Had they been, we certainly would have acted quicker on that. If that.
I'm not sure who's talking right now, but I need him at the podium, please. Thank you.
I apologize. Tim Treadwell, Marine Patrol, thanks for having me. In the future, certainly like the key is just us knowing that there's activity going on there and monitoring that activity, which we do now. Honestly, because of the depth of the water in there, we don't generally go in and patrol that area at that time of year. But if somebody were to make a complaint, which we get all the time about different types of traps, whether they're sometimes they're lawful, sometimes they're not. We can then investigate that along with the DEC, which is what happened in this case. But unfortunately, the resolution wasn't as good as it could have been.
so I think one of the issues last year was the ability to check the traps to make sure that they have these devices.
Right, well, so the Marine Patrol can check the traps, the DEC can check the traps. So let's say you saw a bunch of traps in that body of water and somebody said, hey, can you guys go check those traps? Yes, right? But the general public, or even the trustees, we looked into this, unfortunately, aren't supposed to pull those traps to check them. And unfortunately, they were pulled before we could clarify that they didn't have or prove that they didn't have the TEDs in them. The owner of the traps, of course, claims that they all had TEDs, but so unfortunately we didn't get we didn't have any proof of that. But the owner of those traps was warned and admonished for having his traps in there unmarked, as well as potentially not having TEDs, which he denies. But
I thought the judgment of whether the trustees were authorized to pull a trap came back as yes, they are.
Oh, I didn't know that judgment came back. Maybe we were still talking about it at the time. So I apologize if I'm wrong about that.
I thought I saw that somewhere. I thought I saw it from you, but.
I don't know. I don't know. We were looking into that, honestly, and I'm not sure where that
I had a conversation when this first came about. It is a gray area in that we are the bottom landowners. We don't have police powers like Marine Patrol does. So there hasn't been a resolution that's black and white as to whether or not the trustees have the authority. But I think given the situation, knowing that Tim's group has the power to do so, I think the best course of action for the trustees would be to notify Tim or his group in the future and have them go through those channels to check the traps.
But we're more than happy to be your enforcement arm, as we are for moorings and other things. We have no problem with that, of course.
Yeah, but moorings, we have permits. We know they're there.
Correct.
We don't know where these traps are.
Correct.
Nobody notifies us whether it's all happenstance if we just come upon them. So again, my question is, do we want to start issuing permits for these?
When the DEC, with a DEC permit, that's not tied to a specific area though, right?
No.
You just get the permit, you can put it anywhere, right?
Yes. Unless that locality somehow prohibits it in some manner, right? I mean, that would be up to you. I'm not saying you
that would
should or you
solve-
shouldn't. I think you're,
I know.
you know, honestly, my opinion is there's really not that much activity in that type of, you know, shellfishing or collection. You know, I don't know that it would, I think it would be a lot of work for a very small sector of what's actually being taken for you guys to require permits, but that's completely up to you. You know,
There's already a large administrative layer to it in order for a fisherman to commercially shellfish for crabs. And that you have to have your food fish permit. It has to have a shellfish crab endorsement. It's got a, you know, endorsement, so you have an actual permit number that comes with your food fish permit. So to me, it seems like it would be overkill for the trustees to then require an additional commercial permit when all these commercial fishermen already have to maintain their annual permits to the tune of $500 a year or more.
But this doesn't have to be, I mean, we don't have to charge for this permit. Again, you know, we have all these things going on our bottomlands. Two projects tonight. There was two last meeting. We should have an idea of what's where, you know, and again, the ones last year had no markers on them. It was just an accident that they were found. What was the estimate on how many terrapins were? Yeah, in the hundreds. So, you know, is it important or not? I don't know.
well, I think it's important. I think, I'm not saying that it's not important at all. Don't, you know, I think that there's certain bodies of water that are not easily accessible by, say, a patrol vessel or that we can't access from the beach easily, and that happens to be one of those areas, you know. Whereas in town, I can't think of that many other areas that we can either access easily from the beach or by boat. Right. You know, that one, you know, knowing that there's stuff going on there, we could certainly get in there in a smaller boat, but you know, we generally don't have much need to get in that part of the creek unless there's, you know, marine mammal in there or something like that when we've been in there before, but. Yeah.
Is there can we access the records of permits issued so we could see what permits are out there?
I can find that out for you. I mean, it's a state permit. I don't know that, I don't know if they put a location on there though. So you could have, that person could have permits that really aren't, you know, that are for all kinds of different stuff that aren't actually relevant to trustee water. So you'd have to weed through all those to see, but I could get a ballpark estimate, you know,
At least to the
you know,
town and
sure.
somebody with a town address.
Absolutely. I mean, I can look into that for you. That's no problem.
Tim, on these traps, there's no requirement.
No, there is a requirement for identification.
There is.
There absolutely is, and that was the problem with these traps.
So then
right?
you know, listen, I think if there's an identification on the trap, well, you can always look that up. If there's no identification, I think you can work under the assumption that they were unpermitted.
Correct.
Unless somebody shows up with documentation to prove otherwise.
Yeah,
Correct.
If they're not identified, can they be impounded?
Yes.
So let's see how things go. And
I think it's good to get it out in the open and they know that we're enforcing this.
And we have trap elimination device,
Yeah, we have
TED.
them at the office.
We have them and we can make them available and there's no charge for them, is that right?
That's correct. We have
Yeah,
we have a lot of them in the
scans of
office still. That anyone from the public can come in and
yeah,
request them.
there's no excuse for anybody to not.
Wow, so I didn't know you guys were actually providing those, so I think a great thing to do would be, and even with the town, I'm sure, you know, we could put out a press release that the trustees have those available, and then we could also just remind everyone of the rules regarding that type of trapping, and then that way we're getting the information out to the public, and, you know, I think that that's a win-win. I think that would be great. We could do that, right, easily.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So we'll
And I
work on
think,
that. Yeah.
crab trapping is probably only going to be in maybe Georgia, maybe Northwest, maybe
Exactly.
Fresh Pond,
Yeah.
maybe parts of Accabonac. So,
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
my pleasure.
Thanks for coming.
See,
All right, Barley, are you on the line somewhere?
I'm here. How you doing?
Hey,
I'm on my wife's MacBook, which I'm not entirely familiar with, so we'll see how this goes.
Okay, so Barley has a request to submit an application to the DEC to grow sugar kelp in the Hog Creek. So just wanted to get the board's permission on that.
do you know where you want to do it?
Yeah, I'm trying to share my screen. It's just north. Of course, I didn't include a map on this PowerPoint, but it's just north of the Oyster Garden. It's kind of smack dab in the middle of Hog Creek. You know, Hog Creek's not overly sizable or anything, but it's right in the middle of the creek.
And this, I'm assuming, is for next year?
Yeah.
next winter.
Well, in all honesty, there's some in there now, because I did get permits before. So the permitting, I don't know if I'm going to be able to share my screen, but anyway, the permitting has been confusing because back when I originally did it, and Francis, you might remember signing those, there was a whole bunch of them. Back in 21, I applied for permits and I got all the responses I got were no permit required. And then the DEC came out with their own permit, so I had to basically do it all over again. So that's what I'm doing now. And we've been held up by the Army Corps has been holding things up.
What about all the other sites? Are you doing them too?
No, not this year. Just Shipyard, which we got the permit for last year, and Hog Creek. I was gonna go over the last few years' projects, but I'm not sure if my screen share is working.
so what are the months, Barley? It's winter, December through?
Yeah, they're usually deployed in December. I have a whole PowerPoint, but I can't seem to get it to work. They're usually deployed in December. We collect the reproductive tissue in November. We set everything up in the hatchery, set the spores on string, and still trying to share. And then everything gets outplanted in December, and it grows from December to May, and everything's usually out by Memorial Day. So it's a winter crop. It's a winter crop, and I had some good pictures, but I can't seem to get this thing to work. So it's, yeah, a winter crop, and doesn't, it's very unobtrusive. In Hog Creek, there's 2 lines. In Shipyard, there were 5 strings last year, and we reduced it to 3 this year because growth is very sporadic. Depends on a lot of slip gut issues. Slip gut is a main competitor for the kelp, which those of you that are on the water in the wintertime are probably very familiar with. And this year we have ice, so who knows what's going to happen. As you know, all the creeks are iced over, probably will be for the next week or so. Everything's under ice now.
How many strings you want to lay out in Hog Creek?
2.
Only 2.
Yeah, 2 100-foot long strings. They're marked on the ends with yellow buoys. And like I said, they're just north of our oyster garden.
So it's kind of out in the middle of the creek there.
Yeah, smack dab in the middle. And I'm sorry, I can't seem to figure out how to share the screen on this. I might be locked out because it's a school computer.
can come to the next meeting with your own computer.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Come to the next meeting with everything on a thumb drive.
Anybody have any questions for Laura?
No, I'm in favor of this.
Want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, we approve the Farley's 2 strings in Hog Creek.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, save you from coming
Thank you.
back.
Well, no, come back. Come back.
Yeah, I'll come back.
Live.
Back with the power.
Remote stuff is bunk. Be a lot easier to be there. So I'll talk to Allison about coming next time with a PowerPoint, and I'll hopefully get some more data compiled by then.
All right. Thanks, Barley.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
All right. So we have some amendments to make on the annual resolutions that we passed last meeting. First one has to do with the audit from Norwalk Smith. It's a little bit confusing. It would be resolution 2025-25. The following resolution was offered by Bill Taylor and seconded by James Grimes and adopted. The town has required that an audit be done by the trustees' financial records by their accountant, Norwalk Smith LLP, for the fiscal year 2024. Therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees will hire Norwalk Smith LLP in 2025 to do an audit of the trustee finances for the fiscal year 2024.
I make a motion, we adopt the resolution as written.
Second.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
Okay, and the second one, multi-year permits. Resolution 2025-29. Whereas the East Hampton Town Trustees have begun offering certain multi-year general construction permits, and whereas the East Hampton Town Trustees charge a permit application fee of $125 for the first year and an annual renewal fee of $100 per year additional year of the permit. And whereas in the interest of efficiency in accounting, the East Hampton Town Trustees are requiring the total cumulative fee for the entire length of the permit to be paid upfront, and therefore be it resolved that applicants applying for multi-year permits will pay a cumulative fee consisting of the $125 initial application fee plus $100 for each additional year of the multi-year permit to be paid upfront in advance.
Second. This is a new resolution.
This is a new resolution. You second it?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That's it on the resolutions. Yes.
Clarify, just to understand this. If an applicant just wants a permit for 1 year.
Right.
And then determines that they need an extension, they can still do that.
Right.
But if they're coming up front saying, I want a 2 or 3 year permit, then they have to pay each year up front. That's what you're saying, right?
Correct. There's been like 5-year maintenance permits requested, and that's what this is.
So it's not prohibitive of an extension.
No. No, I don't think it is meant to deal with the extended permits.
Okay.
Old business, Lions Head Ponds, monitoring for blue-green algae. John, is that you?
Yeah. So, back when we first learned of blooms taking place in Lion Head and ponds, and Pond Lane Pond and Swan Pond in Lion Head, we were approached by the Lion Head community and asked if we would do some monitoring of the ponds for blue-green algae. And we had a back and forth discussions with them. He brought up the fact that the ponds aren't accessible to the public because they're within the association's property. And access is limited to association members and guests only. But we agreed to monitor the ponds as part of the Hog Creek monitoring by Dr. Gobler for a year. And this was in 2023. And last year, 2024, we agreed to do it for another year. We also put up signs at each pond, warning signs relative to blue-green algae. So this year, one of the signs went missing, and we were asked to replace it. And it has been replaced, but I think it's time that we kind of make some decisions about how extensive and long-term our involvement is going to be here without a resolution of whether or not the public is going to be allowed to access these ponds, the general public. So I had some discussions internally here, and one suggestion was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Francis, but that we will monitor the ponds and assume responsibility for the marking the ponds, warning signs for the ponds for a period of 5 years, which 2 have already passed. And after that, if there's no resolution of the public access issue, we make it very clear to the Lionhead Association that we're out.
It's a good thing to do, John, because I think we were all hoping to see here is in the absence of public access to these ponds, it doesn't make sense for the trustees to spend any monies doing work or making some plans other than the monitoring here. But I think the hope was that the Lionhead community would take this on and maybe come up with some, utilize our data that we paid for, to come up with a plan of their own to do something here. And I think putting a backstop of 5 years, to me, makes all the sense in the world.
To be fair to the Lionhead community, they are moving in that direction. They did apply for CPF funds, which didn't go through for various reasons. They've talked to Natural Resources and the Highway Department about steps that can be taken, drainage-wise particularly. And they have recently done a association-wide survey of homeowners and polled them as to their interest in, upgrading their properties with IA systems and possibly, some reduction of herbicides, pesticides, and excess nutrients. That survey is apparently just about ready. That'll be made available to us. So there is movement in that direction.
Well, you want to put this in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion. We do a total of 5 years of sampling, maintenance of signage, and the Lane Pond and Swan Pond in the Lionhead Association.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Are we counting the 2 we already did? Or
Yes.
are we counting 5?
Correct.
Yes.
So 3 additional
2028.
years.
But the public can, there's nothing that says they can't
Yes,
access.
there is. There's no
There's a
trespassing
sign
sign.
Yeah, but there's public access in Lions Head that's owned by the town, right? It's like a park. so those people can enter Lion's Head, and use that
Not to the
property.
ponds.
They can drive on the road.
No, it's pretty well, I'll tell you what, it's one of the, that's not the only place you have that. You know, we've got that, what's it, over at Hampton Waters, where there's the sign that they've got, the signs that they've got on their boardwalk to keep the public from getting down to our beach,
Clearwater too.
and Clearwater as well. So,
Yeah, there's signs at the entrance to the paths that go from the road, the paved
yeah, 'cause that
road
one on Bayview, I know.
past the pond to the beach that say, says, you know, residents and homeowners only. So,
As far as the signage goes, currently we're using the ones that are printed off our computer and then reposted. I'd like to order metal ones so we don't have to keep going back and replace them.
Sure. Now, we have a motion, we got a second, we haven't voted.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Committee reports. Harbor Management, we have a request from Jim Walker of InterScience Research Associates for approval to perform maintenance dredging at Devon Yacht Club, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-127-3-16 and 17. Dredging to take place May 21st to May 31st.
This used to be Lazy Point Committee. I don't know why management now.
No.
But in either case, this is something that Devon has done literally every year since I've been on this board. They dredge the inlet into their basin because it does silt in pretty fast. They do not pay us for the dredge material that they harvest because it is distributed on a beach that we own immediately to the east. The application is no different than what we've had in years past, although the timing is a little bit different than what we've had in years past. They've gotten DEC permits and Army Corps permits to do this later, which actually makes more sense. So.
do they have that same observation requirement they had last year?
That's a good question.
It's
Yes, I
exactly the
believe
same.
they do.
The horseshoe crabs?
Yeah, for those horseshoe crabs that are breeding in the basin.
On the beach. Oh, on the beach.
Yeah, they're only monitoring the stuff though, where they're doing the dredging.
Not really spreading it.
They are. They walk on the beach. Honestly, that area, for some reason, they never see any horseshoe crabs over there.
Maybe that's why.
Well, no, even when you walk down the beach a ways, well out of that area, I've never seen them. So I wouldn't blame it on Devon.
It's like in Northwest, Tim never found any horseshoe crabs up by the county park. The first year up there.
Yep, it was really soft, not much.
Make a motion?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Right.
Anyone opposed? Next, we have beaches, a request from Jim Grimes Land Design, Inc. on behalf of Paul and Kristen Arendine of 137 Marine Boulevard, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-17-08-13 to install sand fencing.
Well, I took a look at the file and I didn't see anything to object to. So I don't know, Tim, if you had a chance, but of course, Jim can't opine because it's his project, so.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but I'm going to be honest. This is not my client. It's Matt in my office. It's no different than the project that's been done at this address more than once over the years.
And generally, we encourage sand fencing along the south beaches.
Mhm.
So if you want to make a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone
Put it down
opposed?
that I recused.
Administrative payment of the bills. Riverhead Building Supply, $48.22. Do I have a motion?
What is that for?
That was just a remaining balance of from the summer.
Okay, a second, I'll make a motion, we pay it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have minutes of the meeting of December 9th, 2024, and minutes of the meeting January 13, 2025. Anybody have a chance to look at them?
I looked at the most recent ones and I don't have any comments or corrections.
Anybody look at December 9th?
Yeah, I submitted my comments in writing on the December 9th.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, then we approve both minutes.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and under the report of the clerk, I have two things. I want to form a dredge committee that will monitor the dredging permits, the schedule of dredging in all the harbors, and the culvert. Culvert needs to have a modification on that permit, and we'd like the committee to stay on top of that specifically.
Francis, you were looking to put a couple members, but I would like to request one of the secretaries to be on that committee as well, simply for the institutional memory that'll likely span some of our tenures on this board, because I do think that's one of the loose ends here is, and a good example of that was Lazy Point. You know, why didn't we know that that county was applying for permits for that? Because there was not one individual on this board that was here 10 years ago when they did the last permit.
Okay,
So
all right, so,
Can a non-trustee be on a committee?
I don't know.
administrative,
I mean, the secretaries are gonna be here or not, one way or another, right?
Yeah, but you know, if they sit in on the meetings and they're participating, it does add a certain level of continuity.
Absolutely.
That's,
How do they, in I don't know, the committees that the town has that you're on, Francis, for example, for the special events or something? I mean, there's a lot of town employees involved in that.
and the town board's secretaries are on that committee. They do not have voting rights, but they attend the meetings.
Well, I would suggest that the people who have expertise in the dredging area be the ones who are on the committee for obvious reasons.
Okay, I'd like to appoint Jim, Patrice, and Tim.
Sounds like a
That work?
plan. If they're agreeable.
You don't have any
almost
choice.
anything.
Clerk can appoint committees.
All right, and the other part of this
Agreeableness.
is I would like to I would like to extract the east channel of Lazy Point or Peak Harbor as a special project.
Yeah.
And have that covered by the three clerks, because it's going to be a long-term commitment for that.
Fair enough.
Good? Okay. Anybody have anything else?
Okay, hey, listen, if I can pony on to Francis's comments, we have been trying to push forward with trying to line things up on the East Channel. Kim Shaw has been a great help. She's been in contact with Marianne Billerman, who has basically done a lot of these county DEC permits and Army Corps permits. We're trying to put together ideally an in-person meeting, but it sounds like it'll likely be a Zoom meeting with DEC to just get input right off the bat. Marianne was concerned that initially they may just not be agreeable to it at all. So we may as well find out what the issues are there and try and work through those.
What's her affiliation, Mary Ann?
GEI, the company, it's a engineering and permitting company. We actually used GEI, or we didn't, the town did, for the renewal of dredge permits on George years ago. And actually, who works at GEI? Ben Stratford works there. Scotty Stratford, used to be dragon fisherman.
Okay. Anybody else have anything?
I had one thing.
You should know everybody.
Okay.
Well,
John, you have one more thing?
Well, I just wanted to say that the Montauk School Science Fair is Friday. I don't know, I was contacted. I'm gonna judge. If anybody wants to judge, I can give
I'm
you.
going to be a judge.
You're gonna be a judge too?
Yeah, on Friday.
Yeah, I'm there too.
It's a long day.
They invited us a long time ago.
Yes, they did.
I make Cruz through.
Do they give you lunch?
You can judge them.
They give you lunch. I like that. I want snacks.
Judge.
Well, let's make one of us,
All
one
right,
of us.
do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
All in favor?
Aye.